Welcome to Modern Craftsman Monday. Do we do Modern Craftsman Monday still? I love when people say Monday. I always mess around with Selby. We say Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday. Well, it is Modern Craftsman Monday. I don't know when you all are listening to this, but whatever that day of the week is. Thanks for hopping on, listening to this, supporting us. I had a phone call the other day with somebody who was like, I've listened to literally every single podcast that you guys have put out. His name was Cedric. So thanks, Cedric. That's incredible. I don't think that I've ever listened to not even close, every podcast that we put out. I don't even think I've been a part of every podcast. I know I haven't that we put out. So thanks to all of our listeners. Nick is going to be joining me on this one, but I'm hopping on here. So what happened was last week we had a Q&A. We had Jeff Sweener on. We didn't get to any of the questions, so we decided we'd hop on before it got too long and record the Q&A. So that's what we're doing now. So Nick is going to be on for that, but I figured I'd hop ahead since I had a little bit of time, and I'd get the intro done for this. So we are going to be going over the questions, or at least a handful of the questions that the listeners sent to us. So if you guys like this format, let us know. So many things going in a day and week in and week out. Oftentimes we forget about this option to poll the listeners, poll the people who are following the podcast, and check out what they want to know from us. So if you do like this format or you have more questions, let us know. You can shoot me an email. You can send us a DM, whatever it may be. Just let us know if you like this, if it's helpful to you, if you want more of this. But it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3 part is 6, 7, 8, 9. So 10, 12 questions to get through here. If there's something that you want us to elaborate on as well, we can do that. So just let us know. Again, I appreciate all of you taking the time to submit the questions through Instagram. It definitely helps us out a lot. And when we need something to fill in here, this is really, really great content. We get to kind of dig into our businesses and into these questions, then help you all out at the same time. So that's great. It's a win-win. Win for me, win for all of you, win for Nick. So if you want to do more like this, let us know. So before we get going on the podcast, quick word for all of our partners, our sponsors. As you probably have heard last podcast, we have a new partner on board, which is Velux. You probably know them as the Skylight Company. As with everything, the podcast, we're not charging to have this podcast. There's a few ways that you can support us. Go to the website, sign up for the email list, stay on top of that. Spread the word with what we are doing. You can go on, you can buy and support us through the Modern Craftsman store, or you can support and patronize our partners, Velux, Buildertrend, Andersen, giving back to these companies, right? They're investing in us. They're helping us bring this podcast to market. The least that we can do is patronize these businesses who are investing in us, investing in our industry. So that is no different. As a business owner, you're always looking for ways to wow your homeowners. And who doesn't want more natural light? With Velux skylights, you can transform any space by adding more natural light without sacrificing any privacy. Bring life to focal points, including the kitchen, the living room, or brighten up a small space such as closets or bathrooms, and leave your clients speechless. Learn more at veluxusa.com/remodeler. Velux is VELUX. Check them out. Check out their website. Check out their offerings and reach out to them. See how you can integrate Velux products into your workflow and into your projects. This podcast is also brought to you by Andersen Windows. Imagine the possibilities when you can offer your clients more than just walls and windows. With Andersen, you're not just building a structure, you're crafting an experience that connects people to the world beyond their walls. Their windows and their doors bring in natural light, fresh air, and stunning views, creating living spaces that truly embrace the outdoors. Whether it's expansive glass doors that open to a patio or floor-to-ceiling windows that frame a breathtaking landscape, Andersen products provide the flexibility and performance you need. They're designed to withstand the elements while offering unmatched beauty and functionality. Refine the boundaries of living spaces by choosing Andersen Windows and Doors and give your clients the luxury of living beyond their walls. Last but not least, this podcast is brought to you by Buildertrend. Stay ahead of the curve this year with top insights and data from the top construction pros around the world. The Association of Professional Builders has just released their highly anticipated 2024 State of Residential Construction Industry Report, and Buildertrend is giving you a free copy. Gain valuable insights, trends, and forecasts to elevate your business strategies. From sales, marketing, operations, and financials, you'll see what other builders are doing right, wrong, and where your company stands in comparison. Don't miss out on this exclusive opportunity to revolutionize your approach to construction. Visit buildertrend.com/APB now and get your hands on the report that will shape the future of your business.
What's up?
Chilling.
We got
I
some
told you.
cute-
I told you all that Nick would be here.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Wait, what were you gonna say?
I don't remember.
You said
About
you
my
have
snack?
No, you said something about you have some cute something.
No, I was gonna say Q&A.
Oh, I thought you said cute. I was like, damn, let's hear it.
I got some cute projects coming up.
Yeah, so we have 9, 12, I don't know. Freddie, Perry Craftsman has a 3-parter. So we have a handful of questions that we want to blast through here, making up for last week where we didn't.
Dude, let's
get
start
to
with
this.
Freddie. How about the fact that he just starts by saying, as you are all getting older?
Yeah. Thanks, Freddie.
I read that. I'm like, am I? But am I?
So let's see. As you all get older, what are your future goals? Nick, are you hiring? Tyler, are you expanding your business and bringing in more subs or an employee or two? As I get older, what are your future goals? I think last week was like eye-opening with Jeff as far as like we're all looking at our career from, hey, we have to have this done before our kids get to college and out of the house, when realistically, when our kids are in college and out of the house, I think it does afford us an opportunity for like a second wind. So I've been prioritizing a bit of that, and the next few years, right? Tilly just turned 8 this weekend. Selby's going to be 11 in September. I want to make sure that I have things set up that I can spend time with my family. Obviously, support the lifestyle that we need, but just ensure that I'm not being too short-sighted with like my goals and what I want to do, and assuming that they need to be completed in the next 10 years, 8 to 10 years here. Financially, some goals of mine are just to continue right now, like the best opportunity for me to make money, like other than what we're doing with podcast and business wise, is to continue investing money in the stock market right now. The housing market, it's like getting into real estate is tough right now with everything that's going on. So just continue to invest any money that we have in the stock market, and get us, again, the kids through college, and then kind of get that second wind and get up and going again.
How'd you get into the stock market?
So Rachel's dad, different time, like, 40 years ago, having a family, raising kids. They have one kid. Rachel's mom worked part-time on and off. Her dad had like essentially a blue collar job and didn't make that money. So Rachel's grandfather was investing, got Rob investing pretty early, and allowed them to be able to support their lifestyle basically on one like blue collar income. So when we were looking to start investing, like when after we bought our first house, we got hooked up with their financial advisor. And obviously, with Rachel having a uh, corporate job, like they're taking money basically out of her pay every month and investing it. So, like, between that and then us putting money in with the financial advisor, I'm not like super into it, but it makes the most amount of sense for us. And the market's doing really well right now. So, it's like reaffirmed the decision.
It's funny.
So, kind
I
of
grew up
through
with
her
no,
dad and hooked us
yeah.
up with the financial advisor. And it's been like a good relationship.
I've never like growing up. It was never a discussion, and frankly, even to this day, I don't. I wouldn't consider myself someone who invests in the stock market. Like there, you
Yeah,
know.
so my dad didn't either. My dad did like the real estate thing, and that always was somewhat of a dream for mine. But then, like with the cost of everything and the type of business I have, it's not a realistic option. Like we would be at the point now where we could pull that money,
Mhm,
but it's like I'm kind of creating more work for myself doing that. And this is just
mhm.
like you can put it in there and maybe overall it's not quite a return, but it's not creating any more work for me.
Yeah, I think that's. I
But I've
mean,
gotten a couple of young guys to start investing with the same guy just like early on, and it's tough because at first you don't make any money because the numbers are
mhm,
so small and the returns are so small, and then you get to a point where like the money actually starts making you a decent amount of money and you're like, "Oh damn, like we're making money on top of our salaries right now," which is that's when I think it just takes a while unless you're somebody who was handed something or like in my life it took a while to get there with the life that
yeah,
we have built for us, and the cost of living and what we make. It took a while to get there, and it's we're now at the point where it's like it'll make money every month, like money that makes a difference every month, and
yeah.
that just takes a fair amount of heat off of you.
That's fair. I'm definitely on the side where your dad was, where it's all my money's in real estate,
Yeah, I mean it's
and
not
it's like
anything wrong.
no, it's not. It's just you know, it's all your cash goes into real estate, and you have a ton of equity and property, and then you know until you flip it or refinance it, it's basically tied up.
Yep.
Um, yeah, it's just interesting. Like I know a couple other people, actually only less than a handful of people that are heavily into the stock market, and it just I'm always fascinated by you know what got them there, but then also hearing like the story, like you just said, it's just it's patience, and it's a long time to get. If you're incrementally adding to it, it takes a while to get to something substantial. But
Correct.
once you do have something substantial, it's then it's like it's compounding so quickly,
Yeah.
and it just
I
goes
mean,
back to
basically, it's like we're struggling to put money in there, and you're not really making any money on it. And then I
mhm,
feel like it was all because the stock market was shitty like right after COVID and all that stuff, and then like now that it's coming back so strong, it's a combination of the market being super hot right now and also like compounding that interest and putting the money in consistently, where it's like, oh, it's like making us, it's not like $1,000 here. Like it's a fair amount of money that it's end up making you, and it's like, okay, it's worth it now after 15 years.
yeah, right.
Um, but I mean, other people who make more money or have less expenses in life, I would assume that turnaround is much quicker for them.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's why a lot of people don't do it. It's like, oh, it's 15, like I missed my opportunity. It goes back to that saying, like the best time to plant a tree is 10, 20 years ago. The second
Yep.
best time is today.
I
So
mean, the
it's
other
like,
thing is if you're investing money into long term, you're not spending the money, which is the
right.
like for Rachel, we take it directly out of her paycheck. So if you
Yeah,
never
it
see
just
it,
you
it's a
go
lot
there,
harder
right?
to spend.
I went to
Um,
college with kids that would day trade, and he would literally
yeah.
just sit in his dorm. He went to maybe half of his classes, and the rest of the time he just sat there and day traded all day.
One of my
And when he
floor guys would day trade while he was sanding the floors. Like he would just have his
I feel like
phone
you've
on the
said that.
mount
Yeah.
on his sander, and he would day trade like penny stocks while he was sanding, just like wait for them to go and then sell them, which is crazy to me.
It's funny.
But yeah, it's again, if I would have had the opportunity earlier, like the initial investment of buying real estate, like that would
Mhm.
create work for me as well. It's just, I think the first one's really tough. And then we had kids early, and we've always like not scraped to get by, but like it hasn't been, we're not putting hundreds of thousands of dollars into savings every year. So it seemed tough. But I think that the sooner you do it, little by little, and get it out of your paycheck before it hits your bank account, the easier it's going to be. And we're not like well invested, like,
Mhm.
but we're making it's making us money now, which is good and just like eases up on us a little bit.
I think that's. I mean, when we talk about what our future goals are as Freddie says, get older, it's I think that's everyone's goal is to get in a position where they have a little bit more financial freedom. And I think I think you're hitting on a really important topic is that this isn't if you want that financial freedom, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to go and get a higher paying job always. It's more,
No.
you could have a quote unquote normal job or something that isn't paying, as high as you think that you might need if you're investing in other ways. And whether that is real estate or stocks or whatever the case may be, it's setting something up that awards you that opportunity. And so I share that, Tyler. Like my goal. I have a lot of goals. My goal is to be a builder that builds really impressive projects. Something like White Oak, and using that as an opportunity to kind of reset our trajectory. Um, but beyond that, it's to be profitable and have a team that builds really amazing projects and at a very profitable rate, and share that profitability with them. Build a
Yep.
team that is putting in the equity now to build the business, build the projects, and build the business that awards us as a company, as a team, and as individuals to live a great life. And part of that is when we look at the small pieces of that, it's like I want everyone that is part of this to live in a home that we built, to
Yeah.
live in the product that we're building, and give everyone the opportunity to really be part of the bigger brand.
It's funny. I recorded a midweek today about like, do your employees actually make you money? And this is, you're probably getting towards the threshold with your company where you have a dozen employees where you can make some margins on them. But like, I just feel like as small business owners, oftentimes we have the misconception that we're going and I we have the misconception that you're going to make more money with more employees, right? Where it's like, oh, well, if I have the work in place and I hire more and I'm making a margin on the employees, which is why I was asking you the question that I texted you today. It's like, how much
Hmm.
money can you actually make on your employees at the end of the day? Where it's like, it's a pretty small margin,
Hmm.
and all of the infrastructure that has to be in place, you would have to have like 100 employees to make like big money on your employees. And as a small business, I often feel that like we're not understanding our numbers, we're not capturing our costs to understand that like I feel our employees give us the opportunity to make the business the money and get the leads that we need and make the margins and have the markups. Like there's a sweet spot and amount of work that you need to put in place to land the jobs that make your business money, but it's not necessarily like your employees are adding to your bottom line that much. And I think that a lot of us look at it that way where it's like if I just hire two more guys, I'm making that much more on them, when in actuality, like, you're probably not. If you bring on the two more guys and now they're putting you into a market, or you can produce a certain amount of work that makes you percentages more, yeah, that's something to consider. But like, as a small business, there's just not enough profit on top of our employees that it's like, I'm raking it in on the margins I have on my employees, and I think that a lot of us think that.
Yeah, I
So
mean, it's funny, like, Freddie's question here, am I hiring? I was talking to another builder maybe last week, and he texted me and he was like, "Hey, do you ever feel like you just want to fire everyone and do this on your own and do one project at a time?" And went on to be like, I feel like your White Oak project is so special to you. Like, why wouldn't you just do that? And there's a lot of obviously like financial reasons and business structure reasons. But if I were to just only focus on that and not have a business and get rid of all the overhead, it's like, yeah, that could be a cool life.
yeah,
But it's I didn't really have a good answer for him, and we kind of went back and forth for a little bit. But it's well, it's just not what I want right now. It's as much as fun as that would be, and like how profitable it potentially could be, I also really enjoy working with a team and building a company and building a team. And and I think my goals, when I think about future 3, 5, 10 years from now, it's that we want to be building all of the really cool projects, and not just do one at a time, and and find a team and develop a team that allows us to do that. I I don't know. It's just, I think maybe part of it is I see more financial stability out of the ability to build a bigger business, and which is kind of going against what you just said. But
but
uh,
it isn't, because, but I like, the bigger business, you having people in place now puts you in a market and a job type that can make you the money that you want. It's not
yeah,
because you have, like, if you bring on 14 employees versus 12, that doesn't mean you're making more money just because now you have a markup
right,
on your employees. If that puts
right.
you in a market that now you can do an extra 30% of work, or you can now take on like an extra this job per year, yeah, that's one thing. But I think that oftentimes as a small business, we're looking at, hey, I need to make more money. I can hire somebody else. I'm paying them $20 an hour and I'm charging X amount per hour. Now I can make more money on them. And I think that's where the misconception is, that like, you're not necessarily making a huge margin on your employees' labor as much as they're affording you the job type, the execution, the market, or the volume of work that you need to make the money that you desire to make,
Yeah, I'd agree.
if that makes sense.
No, it does. You're allowing, like, I guess for me, one of the things I said is, I wouldn't be able to do the three other projects that I'm really excited about because I would
Correct.
wouldn't have the capacity. And now we're going to have four amazing projects going on all at one time, which, in my eyes, it's like that's amazing. However, I still want more. I want to be doing six projects at a time, because six projects allows me to have the company structure in which I feel as though it would be the most efficient
Yeah.
for who we are and what we want to be doing. So it's, you know I'm always looking at the opportunity to continue to grow and take on more projects, and take on and being more selective too, where it's, if we have a bigger team, we are able to, like, that's the balance, right? Like, if we have a bigger team, it's, well, you get into the position of, when are you just feeding the machine? But if you have the process dialed and you're building out your backlog accordingly, and you're going after the right projects, well, in theory, you should be able to build out a pipeline that allows you to only do the projects that you want.
Sure.
You know,
And I think
there's a
that's where like the number of employees and like your structure and your setup is affording you an opportunity to maximize and
Mhm.
generate the revenue and like have the profit margins that you need, more so than like more employees just means I'm making a higher percentage on the labor that's put in place. Cause I feel like realistically, in most cases, With employees, it's almost like a break even half the time. Like with there's
Mm.
mistakes and your labor burden and what the market will actually bear. Which, if you guys are interested, listen to my midweek this week or whenever it comes out. But it's basically like, are you making money on your employees? And I think that just like from a basic perspective, and Freddie asked if I'm hiring anyone, and it's like the way that I'm structured and what I need to make for myself and my company. If I have like two decent paying employees on staff, there's not really a market for me to be able to justify with the scale and the scope of projects that I'm doing the price that I would need. um I'd have to do bigger jobs, or I'd have to take on more work. I have to be doing two jobs at once. So when I look at the numbers, more employees doesn't necessarily mean more money. If my like ideal job size and what I'm bringing in affords me to pay one employee, and then keep subs on staff where I don't have to like bear that overhead, I've found a market that works in, where the employees will get covered, and then I make my rate almost regardless of if the employee is there or not. The employee is just affording me an opportunity to take the jobs that I need, the size of jobs, and get work done a little
Hmm.
bit quicker. But I'm not necessarily looking at my employee as adding to my bottom line. And I think that if I'm making $100 a day on my employee, how many employees would I need to really affect my bottom line? Like I need a
Yeah.
lot of employees to make, and I think that's where it becomes tough, especially with what my market will bear, and what I'm doing. So right now, I'm not looking to add anyone to the company. Just continue refining like my sub pool, managing more, and then keeping myself and Justin as busy as we need to be. And that's a bit of my sweet spot, especially like the big consideration is everything that we have going on the back end with the social and the teaching and the podcast. I just don't have time for it. And I like the diversification that it's afforded me. So currently, no, I am not. That's a hard no.
Hard no.
Yeah. I'm not set up. I don't make more money the more employees I have. So, um, it,
Yeah, and
I
and
think
it's
the big difference for you is that like with your employees also, even if it were a break even with your employees, they are investing in every job that comes after that, because like they're on
mhm,
board to build a product and build a company that now is like affording you guys the jobs that you want, that they're now a part of, and the rates that you need. So
mhm,
even if you weren't making a ton of money on your employees, everyone is investing in the future of your company and building a company that's really like set for bigger and better things. And for me, my company is just like every other residential remodeling 1, 2, 3, 4 man show. I just have position myself a little differently to understand my numbers a little bit better, and hit that sweet spot between work put in place and profitability. So that's the big difference there for me.
yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think that that's one of the hardest things to also keep a pulse on. Where you know, like I talked to Julian. Julian's been here for a couple years, and he's very much invested into the future of our business. And I can take a no every day of my life, and I feel like I face a lot of opposition about what I'm doing. And there's days where I feel beaten down about it, but I also I start to consider, it's like, well, how does everyone else feel? Like, we keep talking
Yeah.
about getting to a certain point in the business or in our career. It's but are we moving at a speed that the rest of the team is comfortable with? And I would say probably not, because I'd like to be moving faster too. And I have definitely a more in-depth look behind the canvas, per se, that shows us where we're at, and how we're eventually going to get to where we want to be. um but sometimes it just feels like a slow grind, and I think that's where, in the past, I've definitely lost people, where it's like, 2-3 years go by and it doesn't seem like we've made any improvement. But to me, it's like, no, I know we've made improvement because I can see the next 24 months of where we're headed. But
Yeah. Yeah, that's even all right. So, Drew Abel, I would assume, says, "What's the one piece of advice you'd give to someone who has goals to start their own company?" I think a lot of times people are starting out similar to myself, similar like you did, and
mm,
I think this really um, ties on to what we're saying right now, and understanding your market and what the market will bear and your numbers, and not necessarily working for free. And even this conversation where, like, I just understand where I can max out with the amount of work that I can put in place. And it's as simple as, right, if I have two employees that I want to pay $35 an hour, which by today's standard is not a ton of money, they're costing me $70 an hour each. Like, between them and what I want to make on a job, I gotta be able to put, I gotta be able to have jobs that I can charge $2,500 a day to have three people on a job. And with the type of jobs that I do, like kitchens, bathrooms, can I charge 15 grand a week? Probably not. Like, you have a bathroom that's 3 weeks long, and like most people are selling them for 35, 45, $50,000. I've maxed out my budget just on labor with that structure in
yeah.
3 weeks. And so, like, you have to understand what your market will bear, what your numbers are with your company, and not every job is a fit. Not every market is a fit. And if you can't change the market or you can't adapt to the market, it's like, find a business structure that works based on the work that you can put in place with the team that you can put in place in your market, and you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel. And just understand that, like, it's not always about just taking on more, putting more in place. It depends on your goals. If you want growth, if you want sustainability, whatever that
hmm
is, I think that most people just, they don't understand what goes into this and how much it costs. And I think that they end up basically funding most of their customers' renovations. And if you can sort that out on a really small scale, when it's you and a helper or you by yourself, it's going to help you transition to where Nick is, where you're always profitable from day one, rather
Yeah.
than like waiting to get to 10 people to be profitable. And I think that your business would be a lot different.
Let's just clarify. I have not always been profitable since day one.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, if you're profitable from day one with one, two people, that's going to make the transition to three people to five people much easier, rather
Totally.
than the notion of, once I get to three people, I'll be
Yeah.
profitable. It's like,
Eh,
no, I know how to do it here. How do I
And
do it when I step up?
let me add to that because we're going through we're working on some like financial reporting internally, and basically building this dashboard that gives us kind of like a in-depth look at each project profitability, overall profitability. And I know that sounds like rudimentary, but we're doing it in a way that's a little bit more encompassing, because we do self-perform some labor, which adds to our overall job margin. But the point is that we had some poor accounting over the last couple of years, and we're playing catch up with on these jobs. And I'm someone that I ask and ask and ask and ask and ask. Like, I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that. I want to know. I want to understand. What did I spend on concessions? How much did I donate to the project? And we got to a point in this spreadsheet that it was super complex,
Yeah.
and there's a ton of information on it, and it's great, only to find out that some of the first columns in that spreadsheet had the wrong information in them. And you would change them, like a minor change would make, insane impacts across the whole spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And I was getting frustrated, and we sat down as a team last week, and we realized, I was like, wait, stop. We need, like, as a group, we decided, like, we need to stop and bring it all the way back to the basics and just make sure that the first part of this quote unquote spreadsheet is correct
Yeah.
before we
It just
even
doesn't
discuss
need to be
anything
as
else.
complicated. Like,
It not now. Right now, the
no.
most important part is, like, let's set you, like, so I'm agreeing with you, Tyler, is like, you have to get this right from the beginning and understand what your true costs are and what it, like, really understand your numbers. Everyone says that. Make sure you understand your numbers. Make sure you understand your numbers. And I'm someone that continues to question my numbers in
Well, yeah, it's
everything
like,
I
would
do.
you have landed those jobs had
If you,
you had your
right,
numbers been right? And, like,
right.
does the market even with your setup, does the market even allow for that? Or it's
And
like, do we
eh,
have to change our setup and our structure?
dude, that's like that's such an interesting point because I was winning so many jobs a couple years ago. Every job I would the number like it was yep, good, approved. And then now it's we're so in tune with how to price work that we're pricing ourselves out of work. We went from
Correct.
being like the lower end of the price to now we're in the upper end. And it's like, oh, that's because we actually know what this is going to cost and how we actually want to pull this off. But
Correct. And now, like, you're not funding these
yeah,
renovations.
but I think it is like it's important to I think about like the cost of money, which is something that I'm dealing with on like the development side. It's sure, like there's all of the money that that you're borrowing and so on and so forth, but what about the cost of that money? And then and the timing of when you borrow it versus when you pay it back, and how that impacts the overall profitability. That's the stuff that's all newer to me, where I'm learning that side of it, where everyone talks about on the development side, it's like, yeah, every day costs X amount of dollars. Like every day lost is, a huge hit. But until you understand that, you don't, it really doesn't resonate. And I think that same thing when, we talk about labor and, if you guys, if you guys, if you guys have signed up for our newsletter, you would have or you will be getting a copy of our labor burden calculator, which is something that we put together a couple of years ago. And once you go through that and realize, wow, there's all these things that it costs to have this employee on staff, you simply just don't know. You think, oh, I pay him $25 an hour. He probably cost me 35. It's like you do the math and you realize it's $47 an hour, and you've
Yeah.
been billing him out at $50 an hour.
And you're underestimating how much time they're gonna be there. So,
Right.
like, it just,
It's
like,
like I don't understand. Yeah,
compounds.
it's like I don't understand why it says I'm profitable, but I actually have no cash in the bank.
Yes, you underestimated how long they're gonna be there, and you're also not capturing the actual cost of them, let alone making money on them.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, so now I have all of this figured out, and now you're like, "Holy shit, I just priced myself out of every single job here." And, like, that's the struggle that we're going to face because at the end of the day, even if it's apples to oranges, when 90% of the industry doesn't understand their numbers and is completely undercharging, you are up against that. Like, no matter
Well,
what, even if it is
that's the
apples
bigger
to
issue.
oranges, when somebody says you're $2,500 per day to staff this job, and there's so and so who can do it for $1,200, regardless of if it's painted in gold, it doesn't matter. Like, that's a huge number that you're up against, and that's the bulk of the industry. So now it's like, now I need to consider marketing, what my market looks like, who I can market to, and can I land jobs at this price point.
Hey guys, quick interruption. So we talked about it, but the Contractor Coalition is coming to Boston September 27th through the 30th. Tickets are selling. We will sell out. It is maxed out at 30 people. So if you want to join us in Boston for a home tour of some of our projects, as well as an in-depth 2-day educational event, this is our sixth, and we plan to sell out our sixth. Join us, contractorcoalitionsummit.com. I think that's a huge issue that you hit on, Tyler, is that so many people are doing this wrong and not making money that now that becomes the average. Matt Reisinger posts that billboard once a year. Forever it was like $70 a square foot. They could
Oh
build
yeah.
houses. And I think last year it went up to like 170. I was like, that's a huge jump
Yeah.
for for 1 year. But hey, like I understand. And that's still insanely cheap because it's like we couldn't build for that. But the problem is like the industry as a whole, is oftentimes like so many people are pricing it wrong, like you said, that now the quote unquote average across the industry is too low.
Correct.
So now
And I think it
then
always
you
has been.
yeah, and then you get a client saying, well, why can he do it for $300 a square foot? I'm just going to hire him. And and then they go through it, and then you talk to them like, yeah, it wasn't super smooth, their communication kind of sucked. And it's not that, like, that person probably could have been a really, like, probably was a I shouldn't say probably, that person could have been a very good builder, good craftsmanship, had the opportunity to do a good thing, but that person got into a position where they couldn't afford to finish the job, so they had to rush and get it done because they
Correct.
underpriced it. And you were in this perpetual cycle where I think, I believe that I'm seeing the industry kind of flip to the point of understanding quality craftsmanship, and there's a lot more. I mean, I'm not I'm not going to take credit for, with the podcast, but there's a lot of people out there that are promoting this and talking about it, and teaching and sharing on how to be more profitable, like what we do on the podcast, like what we do at the summit. Like, the whole point of that is, we want to help the national average be accurate, because if you, myself, and a handful of other people are all trying to sell at a premium, quote unquote premium,
Yeah.
we need the average to come up, so there we don't get into this position of, competing against someone that priced it inaccurately.
Yeah, I think the problem is once you get your numbers right and you understand the cost of doing business and the cost of executing, your market shrinks so small. So it's like,
But it's also the client side where it's like, okay, well, hey, maybe you actually can't afford a kitchen renovation. Maybe the guy telling you he could do it for 25 grand, with that being in your budget, yeah, you could renovate your kitchen for 25 grand. I've renovated a kitchen in a house years ago for 10 grand.
yeah.
But it's not the same project.
No, but that's why like your market is shrinking because your
Yeah.
ideal customer now instead of being 50% of the market is 5% of the market.
Right,
So then
but it's both
can
sides.
it is, but can you with the amount of people on staff and the work that you need to put in place, does your market is there enough within that 5% to support your model? And I think that that's what people have to understand. Joel Nickel Carpentry, you sound like a country singer, Joel Nickel. I feel like you're gonna have a hit single coming out here soon. Do your labor slash management rates change year to year, or how do you decide when slash if to change them? What you
Yeah,
think?
so our labor rates, so the way we do it is we have a labor rate exhibit that goes into all of our owner contracts. And on that exhibit, it states that every year at the new year, we have the right to change the rates. So yes, in simple terms, yeah, the rates change year to year, and we decide on that, when, in terms of, we just set that at like the new year. So let me back up, because I guess what he's asking is like the technical side of it. So our labor rates are different than what we pay someone. Our labor rates are our billable rates. So a carpenter might be billed out at, say, $100 an hour, and that's the billable rate for that carpenter. They might make anywhere from, you know I don't know, $30 to $50 an hour, and then there's burden and then profit on top of that. But the labor rate is designed to just be a set standard, and every person is going to be paid slightly differently under that, and we can get into that in the future. But the following year, like, cost of living goes up, people get bonuses, people get a pay increase, but ultimately we're looking at what is the market for a carpenter. If someone gets a raise, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to increase our rate.
Yeah.
The rate's going to go up based on what the market said, what we feel as though the market says is appropriate for that role. Now, that role might be a carpenter, or they might go to a senior level carpenter, and they're doing a higher dollar tasks. Okay, well then, they might switch into a different labor rate. But generally speaking, it's like, you have the cost of living increase year after year. So that's an easy one to just kind of attribute back to, like, how much you're giving someone as a raise versus how much you're increasing your labor rate to the client. But from our side of it, we do biannual reviews with our team. So we sit down informally in the middle of the year, but then we sit down in November prior to the end of the year to talk about, financial compensation, raises, bonuses, things like that. And that gives us the opportunity to have those conversations and then put a plan into place that we know, hey, our overall labor is going up 5% this year. We should increase our labor rates 5% in the new year.
Yeah, I mean, it's everything. I mean, I don't know if I've had a year where my insurance has come down. Like it's always going up,
Yeah.
right? So, and not necessarily because you're putting more work into place. It's just it's always going up. There was this storm that
Mm,
created this. There was this. So, like, you should be reassessing those rates every year, and it's the same thing that we talked about before, where you need to understand your numbers and your market because yeah, you can just say I'm going to raise my price, I'm going to raise my price, it's going up this percentage every year. But if what you're competing with doesn't bear the increases, that's not, you don't have to just lose money, but maybe you need to restructure or create more efficiencies or reduce the cost of you and your business to ensure that your profit remains the same, if not greater. These costs should be passed on to customers, but if they are unable to bear those costs, then you need to look internally what affords me the same profit or higher profits, assuming my risk and what's going on this year versus last year, to ensure that you're just not losing money or losing jobs because you raised your price, which I think is a big thing with a lot of us. Again, where I've been saying we're not necessarily underbidding jobs from a numbers perspective, but we're over executing on those projects. And it's the same thing with our businesses. If you're having trouble making money with the business, you might need to find a way to restructure so that the number of the job is the same, but your profits are going up because you've either leaned out, you've reduced your overhead, whatever it is. The market's going to bear a certain rate. And if you're having trouble landing them, maybe look internally to increase your profit margins somehow. You don't have to give it away. The customers shouldn't be the only ones who are benefiting from this all the time. You need to
agreed.
guarantee that you're making your money. Um, Daryl W asked, and these are all kind of I'm going through these with, I feel it's just continuing with the conversation, but how do you attract your ideal clients who appreciate value over price? And this is the same thing. Like once you start getting all these numbers into place, yeah, now I'm so much more expensive. So now this is where the marketing comes in and testing the waters and feasibility, and the analysis of your market to understand if there's a customer in this price point, and the type of work, and you can generate the revenue that you need to. So for me, understanding all of this, and obviously my company's super easy to do versus somebody like Nick's because there's just the numbers are far less convoluted. But then once I know my numbers, I'm very confident in what I'm selling because there's no BS. I understand what it takes for me to be on a job, and there's customers who are willing to foot that. So any job that I take at a lesser rate than that is literally costing me and my family or my employees money. So I
Mm.
think that understanding those numbers really gives you the confidence to find the customer who's a fit for you.
Yeah, I think, for me, for our clients, I think clients in general, they value speed, and they value speed of information and understanding, where you stand. So you want to be attracting your ideal clients. Get to the answer of their question as quickly as possible. If they, if they're reaching out and they want to know if you can build that project, get ask the questions back to figure out like if you can. And a lot of times that's centered around budget or timeline or overall capacity or, ability to execute at the particular level they're looking for. And you need to be able to communicate that, quickly and, to your point, with confidence. And I think that, when you are confident in your process and you are confident in your product, you can communicate to a client very quickly as to, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is how I think it's going to, this is what I think it's going to cost, this is how long I think it's going to take. And I think this goes back to, hey, understand your numbers, understand your process. One of the things I struggled with in the beginning was, I didn't know how to price work, or I didn't know how to price a particular project because it was a bigger project than I had ever done. And I just, when I got stuck in those positions or in those considerations, I would sit down and kind of break it down into the bits and pieces that I did know. And essentially, you take a really big project and you divide it up into a bunch of small little ones, and then you add it up and you have, you know, a total, right? This is what it's going to take. And obviously there's some efficiencies from doing a big project over a bunch of little ones, but you can build confidence in kind of dissecting it or understanding it in the way that is familiar to yourself.
Yeah, and it's so much easier to understand your target customer and your target market when you are speaking to facts and data. For a long time, I didn't understand all of the inner workings, and basically, like, cumulatively what made my business operate and what made me money. So you're guessing at who you want to sell to and what price point, and you're just uncertain of everything. Like, I can do the work, but I don't understand the business. So now you're trying to oversell, or why is this worth this much more? When if you like if you can actually quantify what you're doing and why it's worth this much, it makes it so much easier to sell that to customers, because it's just fact. Like, it's either
Mhm.
fact or it's not. And it's like, this is how much it costs me to be here. I have customers and work that support this. And I completely understand if you are not willing to, or if that's not within your budget, but I'm going to go find the lead and find the customer that is willing to support the structure of my business, because my business is structured this way, not just off like happenstance. It's because of everything that makes my business operate in the rates that I need to make. And that makes it so much easier. I just feel like you have so much more confidence in selling your price, in selling your numbers when you understand that. And then it's
Mhm.
like, now at this point, these are the numbers. Why why do you justify this with, like, for a customer? Why is it worth it to do this now? Why is it worth it to pay 30% more? Why is it
Mhm.
worth it to hire us versus somebody else? And now everything that makes up those numbers comes into play. It's the same thing as having a fully transparent pricing. You have any questions, like you think that the plumber's high, that's just an opportunity for me to explain why my plumber costs more than the other plumber you got a price from. And that's just like, that's a selling point for me.
Yeah, and if you can't justify that, hey, my plumber charges more for a reason that, let me pause. I think in that scenario, when a plumber, like if someone questions your plumber, our initial reaction is to defend the plumber, and oftentimes the defense is for our benefit.
Correct.
And when you're selling something, that doesn't help. If you're like, well, I know him, so I know he's going to get the job done correctly, and I don't have to worry about, him not being insured. And it's like, all the client hears is, I'm hiring him because he makes my job, your job easy.
Yeah, so
It's like, sell that.
they're
Yes,
footing the cost of that.
sell that to me. It's like, instead, flip it. And I say this all the time. It's like, you have to stand in their position and understand, why would this be a value to them. It's like, hey, I understand that my plumber is 30% more. What I can say is that here's a few of the things that he does that is going to benefit you. He always plumbs the drain in a way where, they're easy to maintain. So, when you're combing your hair and you get hair stuck in the drain and it's a nightmare to clean out, he's going to make that super, like, whatever it is that's going to trigger them to be like, oh, hey, that's an issue that I have that I would love a solution for, and you just told me the solution for it.
Sure, I mean, even as much as like, hey, my plumber's an owner operator, he's not making money on volume. He's making money on his services, his quality, his attention to detail. So it's like, my plumber's trustworthy. He's going to show up when he says he's going to. I know that we're not going to be failing inspections. Everything's going to be on the up and up. And yeah, he makes money on himself working. So that cost is not spread across
Eh,
multiple employees, but you're getting him.
But Ty, like, I agree that that's a fair reason why he does charge more, but the client doesn't care about that. That's the problem. The client doesn't care that he's getting him or that he shows up on time, because that is the expectation, that someone shows up on time no matter what. Like that, just from a client's perspective. And I've went around and around in these conversations many of times, and he's like, and I've said that to a client. They're like, well, why would I expect that any other plumber wouldn't show up on time? That should just be the expectation, because that is a very quote unquote easy thing to do. Do what you say you're going to do. It's, you have to pick at something that they've had a pain point with, or hey, yes, you know maybe it is them showing up in time. It's like, hey, listen, like, I understand my plumber is more expensive, but I remember you was telling me about when you had done your other bathroom over with another contractor, that whole job got delayed because the plumber that you're telling me about right now screwed the whole thing up and had to redo all the plumbing. Like, and what I want to do is I want to help prevent that. I want to make sure that we get this job done on time, because you have a big graduation party that we need to be done and out of the house for. And now that plumber being on time and doing what he says is related to the graduation party, that's the most important thing in their life right now.
Sure, and, like, it ends up coming down to who your customer is and who you're
Yeah,
selling to, and, like, for me,
and knowing what they
oftentimes
care about.
yeah, oftentimes for me, it is, and this is different than you and what you've combated for a lot of your career, is that, like, customers are hiring me to keep things moving forward, to be on the job, and to have these subs that are going to be different than the bigger outfits. Like, I'm not going to be less money. I might not be quicker. I might not be able to turn the job around faster. But what they are hiring me for is attributes and qualities similar to myself and the way that I operate my business. So it's just knowing your customer and knowing your market and understanding what speaks to them. It could be warranty, it could be trustworthiness, it could be punctuality. It's understanding what your customer is willing to pay for. And I think that's going to get your foot in the door and then make a happy customer. I can promise you something, or something that's not important to you. And then again, it doesn't matter to the customer. They're not willing to pay that upcharge or that premium because that doesn't speak to them. So it's understanding what you do well. And I think that a lot of times, if you understand what you do well, you understand where your numbers are. And even if you are a premium, like, yeah, I'm a premium because of this, 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 and this,
Hmm.
then you're speaking to the correct customer, and you're weeding out the customers who aren't necessarily looking for that. So it's different for every company and every business and every customer. But I think that's why, when you understand all of those things, and your market now is so much smaller, you are really focusing on the correct customer at that point,
I think
instead of wasting your time on everyone else.
I think also, a client that's been through it before is easier to sell,
Oh yeah.
because we're going through it right now. Customer interviewed us to build a new home. They had built a home in the past, and they unsolicited shared with me that they the previous builder did just a fine job, and the project came out fine, but communication was terrible, and they just never felt as though they were being communicated with, and didn't know what was going on at times, and that was really important to them. And it's like, great, here's my spiel on how we communicate, and I'm directly responding to something that you find to be important and part of your decision making.
Yeah. I mean, I can recall even a job that I sold, like my site setup and cleanliness and
Mm,
isolation and all that, and how important that is. And that's like a huge selling point for me. And I had a customer who was just like, I can't wait to get this shit down. And
mm,
I'm like, I got my rate for it, but like, I didn't sell to the right customer, because my customers generally are like, this is ideal. Yeah, it may affect the overall flow of our house right now, but you're protecting us from this, 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 and this. And that's like a perfect example of me learning and being like, I sold the wrong thing to the wrong customer. And I did get my price, but I wasn't focusing on the right thing. There were other things that were more important to them. And that was like a shortcoming on my behalf.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, Beamish 1326 asks, how do we handle when a sub disappoints you? And goes on to ask, like, verse, how do you hire the best subs? I think this is, I think this is a really important skill to learn. And this goes for, I mean, this goes for everyone, right? It goes for subs, it goes for employees, it goes, to friends and family. And it just, you know, communicating your expectation and then providing feedback but ultimately, like, one of the things I learned, a lot through reading Jocko's book and even being at the event with him, because this was something I had asked about, like, what happens when someone disappoints you? Like, how do you work through that? How do I buy into the extreme ownership, but ultimately, like, what is the, everyone's like, what's the trick? How do you get it? How do you fix it? And, it came down to the fact that you have to get them to understand or believe that it's their idea, and I think that when you see something that you're disappointed with, or a trade does something that you're not happy with, the first reaction is like, well, did I communicate what my expectation was? I'll give you an example. Electrician, you know, wired all of our HVAC equipment with low voltage wire, and it's literally just stapled to the joist above, and then they used like the foil face duct tape to
Yeah.
put the wiring down the side of the ductwork, and then it was coiled with wire nuts sticking outside the equipment, and it worked, and it was fine, and it probably passed every other job he's ever been on. But I was like, that looks like shit to me. And so, but I never said anything. And and yeah, the argument's like, well, he should have asked, or how is he supposed to know that there was anything else? He wasn't. But here's a situation where it's like, I have a conversation with them. I'm like, hey, listen, like, that's on me. I didn't set that expectation. I didn't realize that that's how it was going to be wired. I'm not happy with it. And then ask them, is what could we do to make this look better? And it's, maybe you get the, I don't know, like, this is how we always do it. It's like, yeah, I totally get that, man. Like, I know this is how you always do it. Like I said, this is on me. I didn't realize that this was how it was going to look. Is there something we could do to make, clean this up and make it just look more intentional? Like, I use the word intentional all the time. And then I get well, we could put it in conduit. Okay. Yeah, let's do that. And it wasn't me, like, I knew that you could put it in conduit, but it
Yeah.
wasn't me telling them, "Hey, I want that in conduit," where it's, then it's just that me just barking orders and them responding to it. Instead, it's get them get them to communicate what the solution is. Because what happens is, now they've made that decision, and when they go to do it again, they're gonna come to me and say, "Hey, you want the stuff in conduit, right?" Like, I remember last time, like, we discussed putting this in conduit. Is that what you want in this one? And you're setting a better precedence, um, for your expectations, especially for the details.
Yeah, I think it's not a perfect science, and like I've struggled with subs, and the hardest part is trying a new sub and then basically grooming a sub to do things the way that you're doing things, especially if you're doing things different again than 75-90% of other contractors out there. But I think it comes down to communicating with the subs at first meeting with the
Mhm,
owner of the company or whoever it is, like what's a priority for not only you but for your customers. What are your customers looking for in their project, what's important to them, and then finding the sub that's willing. They're all going to tell you what you want to hear. They're all going to fix stuff when it's wrong, but like how to avoid as many of those issues as possible and ensure that, like, I want my subs to be profitable. I want them to have as few headaches and hiccups as possible, and having the conversation with them from the onslaught, like what's important to you, what's important to your customers, why you're coming to them. And it's the same thing that I want from a customer when they come to hire me. Like, why do you want to hire me? Why are you entertaining our company for a project? And it's the same thing that I want to communicate to a sub is, why am I looking to you? What
mhm.
spoke to me about what you do, that I feel aligns with our company? And then again, you have to have a little bit of grace during that learning process, because it's not going to go as smoothly as somebody who's worked for you for 2-3 years.
Yeah.
um it comes down to, like, what do you need? Do you want a sub that it's the same people that show up to every single job? Like, if that's important to you, you need to find a sub that's smaller.
Hmm.
Like, if it's getting it done quickly and knowing that my PM schedules you a week before you need to be there, then you probably need to find a bigger company, and that's a priority for you and your customers. But everyone works differently, everyone makes money differently, everyone has like efficiencies that benefit them, and I think it's finding out who fits your customer base and who fits your company to create the best product for everyone. And it's definitely, it's not an exact science, so it's finding who is and then grooming them the best that you can.
I think it's also really important to note that a lot of people, a lot of our trades are in this industry and constantly pushed to do things faster and cheaper. And I've told this example a thousand times, but one of our tile guys, he came in and he would move so fast, and he would always have to ditch in the middle of the day to go to another job, and there would be issues, and he's like, all right, I'll take care of it next time I'm there. And I'm ripping out tile while he's off site grouting another backsplash, and it was because he wasn't charging enough, because decades of doing it, he kept getting pushed and pushed and pushed to do things faster and cheaper. So here's a guy that was in the industry, starting out probably similar to us, where, trying to make good money, trying to sell the value of doing things, but constantly just told, hey, do it cheaper, do it faster. To a point where if nine out of the, or if 90 out of the 100 jobs you do are that mentality, then hey, like you're going to be groomed to do things faster and cheaper. And the one guy that tells you that he wants it done, not like he wants you to slow down and do a better job, it's, well, you haven't been groomed to do it that way.
And you might not be able to.
Right. But the conversation with him was, well, what would, instead of you leaving a half a day, like, how can I keep you here all day so you're not focused on getting to the next job? And it's like, well, I'd have to charge more money. It's like, well, how much more? And it's like, well, this much more. It's like, then do that,
Yeah.
because I see the value in paying you that, because you'll do a better job. And I think that's a lot of trades that are just constantly up against, doing things faster and cheaper, where, there are the guys out there that value the time that they put into it and want a higher quality job. And it's up to people like us to communicate, like, hey, this is my expectation. I expect you to be here all day, and that, the tolerances are XYZ. And for us, and if you need to charge a different rate to accomplish that, then let's have a conversation about it. That's
Yeah.
also important, where I think that, some guys just, they'll get a price and then they go back and they say, okay, this price looks good. Just to be clear, like, these are my expectations. It's like, whoa, wait a second. I priced this job with PVC, pipe everywhere, and your expectation is cast iron. Like,
Yeah.
I
Way
gotta,
different.
yeah, way different. It's like, well, you should have assumed that. It's like, no, no. This is where you have a conversation and communicate your expectations.
Yeah, and then it's like, moving forward, let's make this our standard, like
Exactly.
from here on out, so we don't have that mistake or that
Yeah,
breach in communication.
totally.
Um, all right. Well, I hope that was helpful answering some questions for all of our listeners. We have an ongoing list of more questions we can get to, but I mentioned on my podcast as well, if you guys want to keep sending them in, um, we'll compile a list and then we'll get to them as they come.
Yeah, do that by sending a DM to at Modern Craftsman Pod on Instagram, and head over to moderncraftsman.co and sign up for our newsletter.
Hell yeah! Thanks, guys.